Welcome everyone to the Texas Children and Nature Network's webinar, Unstructured Play in LiiNK Schools is linked to positive health benefits for children and teachers. My name is Alice Jansen and I'm the Education Events Coordinator with the Texas Children and Nature Network, and we are very excited to have you all with us today. Automated closed captioning is available for this workshop. Click the Show Captions CC button on the Zoom toolbar for live transcript options. We are recording our session today. To save bandwidth, we ask everyone to turn off their cameras and mute themselves during the presentation. I will be monitoring the chat so you can share your questions there, and I will share them with our presenters during the Q&A portion of the presentation, which will take place toward the end of our time together. We have Jenny Larios, our Health and Nature Liaison for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, running our tech today, so thanks, Jenny. She'll also be doing our attendance. I will be sharing the recording link of today's session in a follow-up email. If you are uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change your name to anonymous and then private message Jenny with your name for our attendance. Also, if your Zoom name doesn't match the name you registered with, please change your name or private message Jenny with your name. All right, this next part is very important, so listen carefully. Only registrants that attend the live webinar, and this is it, you're in the right spot, live webinar, right here, right now, are eligible to receive a certificate of completion. We do not automatically send all attendees a certificate. You must request the certificate after attending the live webinar. The email you receive with the webinar Zoom link has the specific instructions for requesting the certificate. Attendance is taken during the live webinar, and we will check our attendance list to confirm your participation. We need the name you registered with to issue the certificate. All right, that was a lot, but I'm going to go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. The Texas Children and Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I am on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sana people. Our ongoing colonial presence on indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. And the work that we do through the Texas Children and Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. I will be putting some information in the chat to learn more about land acknowledgements and these indigenous peoples groups. All right, now to the good part. We have planned a special webinar for you all today on unstructured play in LiiNK schools with Dr. Debbie Rhea, the LiiNK project creator and director and professor at Texas Christian University. So welcome, Debbie. We are super excited to have you with us today. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to let you go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you for having me on today, and for Texas Children and Nature Network for wanting to do this webinar today. So thank you very much. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So there's been a lot that we've been doing over the years. I think it's 12 years now that we've been moving schools to think a little differently about how they should approach recess and how much time we should give for recess and what kind of benefits we have for recess. So I'm going to talk about some of those today. That's my main goal. But I'm also going to talk about stress and how stress really impacts the ability of kids to learn. And if given the right dosage in schools around play, recess time, some character development kinds of things, you see a lot of positive growth in children in spite of other things that might be going on around them. So I keep getting the admit in. So State of the Nation, I just wanted to bring up some things since we're going to be talking about stress as one of the main areas, along with obesity, chronic illnesses, overweight kinds of things with diet. Anxiety and stress are not mutually inclusive or exclusive, but one can lead to the other. And so I'll talk about that a little bit. Socialization and the minimalization of socializing, and then technology issues. You'll see on here that D3 is mentioned, and I'm going to talk about that with the outdoors. But I think one of the biggest things to look at here is that there are lots and lots, millions of people who are being impacted by all of these things that I just listed every year. And it's leading to earlier deaths. It's leading to individuals not being able to be competent in certain jobs in the workforce because physically they just can't do them. And so I just wanted you to see this kind of as a starting point of we've got a problem and we've got to fix this problem. And it starts with our youngsters, but we also have to make sure that our younger populations of adults all the way through the aging populations, that they are in tune with this as well, because we want our adults to live healthy lives, not unhealthy lives that may prolong, their they may not die as early, but they're still going to be living with pain and all kinds of illnesses with prescriptions and all kinds of stuff. Properties of play. I come from a background where play should be child directed. It should be what the child wants to do. They should be able to have options for things to do outside, whether it be nature types of activities in a forest. As you see in the top left, this is a school that we work with in Michigan, and they're outside every day, no matter what the conditions, including -0, below 0 weather. They're just always out. Now, this is a really neat picture because they're in shorts and tennis shoes and building things. But all in all, we want children outside, and we want them to be doing what they would like to do, because the interests of them will lead them to very positive things as a result of that playtime. But we also need play. And a lot of times we give up our play in order to watch our children play or our grandchildren play. But in reality, we should be taking children out with us to do our activities. We should be spending time outdoors doing whatever. I mean, we don't have to, it doesn't have to be only exercise time. It can be to engage in other things that are playful in nature, in forests, at the water's edge, wherever you want it to be, but enjoy play for yourself as much as children enjoy play. We've had a decline in play across our country from the time of baby boomers, which is me. I'm a baby boomer. We had 60 minutes of play every day in our school setting. We focused on the whole child. We had less stress on academics and much more on what was really going on in the classroom. How did we reach individual differences in the classroom? The teacher had more freedom or flexibility to follow the lead of the class that day, to adjust to meet the needs of the kids. Home was much more free to roam and play outside, much less technology. In fact, we only had a phone that was attached to a wall that had a really long cord and would go, across the kitchen. We might trip people up with it. TV was black and white when I first started watching TV, and only had a few channels, and very minimal sports for children. In fact, I think that's a good thing, that there were minimal early children's sports. I don't think that that's healthy for kids, and that could be a whole nother topic. But we turned out good, and we were able to compete at higher levels without a problem, and we didn't have near as many injuries as children are having now. Generations to the present, whichever generation you want to pick, we've been focused the last 25 or 30 years on academics. We've been moving more and more towards the testing realm. And in fact, if somebody doesn't do well on a test, we just do more to increase the amount of pressure we put on kids and on teachers to get higher scores on academics. We do less time with recess. We're down to about 20 minutes or less of recess in most schools around the country. Extracurriculars, in a school setting are declining, but it's because we're doing more with e-gaming. And I don't know if y'all know what that is, but it's indoors with video types of competitions, with gaming competitions among people in a room and advance, just like you do with sport. And there's a lot of money going towards that right now. So we've really come to a more sedentary position on that. Home life is much more indoors than outdoors because of safety and maybe lack of being at home for the parents, increase in technology, and then the sports competition and winning rules for, that you've got to win every time you go out has become more and more early childhood all the way up. So the recess has really gone away. Unstructured play has gone away. And when I recognized that this was happening, I began to think about what did we need to do in schools that could help bring recess back. Because if you think about it, if we're at a school setting for 7.5 to 8 hours a day, that's the majority of a child's life when they're young. And it benefits them to be able to play. And I'm going to talk about some of those things. So for me, it was, how do we inspire creativity, innovation, happiness back into children again? So what I'm going to do at this point forward is I'm going to show you some of the benefits that children have as a result of 4 unstructured play breaks a day at 15 minutes each, which is 60 minutes a day, but it's spread over the time period of when they come to school to when they leave. And those 4 breaks are, you may start with an hour of school, 45 minutes to an hour of school, and then have that first break outdoors, followed by another 45 minutes to an hour, another break. But we also use lunch and specials to interrupt the pattern of the content in the classroom. Now, I think it would be awesome if we saw recess, unstructured outdoor play, as content, just like we do other content areas. But at this point in Texas, we don't do that. We think that recess many times, and when I say we, I'm just talking about adults in Texas that have decisions over children. These adults that are making these decisions are saying content is more important than play outdoors. If they want play outdoors, they need to do it somewhere other than the school setting, because we've got content we have to learn. We're not passing our tests like we should. And when we think about it like that, it's like, why are we not doing recess? But it's because we put too much emphasis on competition and academics and not enough on individual needs of children. So let's go ahead and get into the LiiNK play research. At this point, we have published much of this data that you're going to see today. The stress data is still in progress to be published, and the first set of data will probably be coming out in the next few weeks. And then the next set of data, you're only seeing a snapshot of it. But when it comes out in an article form, we'll make sure that it gets out there to y'all so that you can see it. So the truth is that, when we think of the brain and how that brain is created and what it provides for us, we need to think in terms of it's complex. There are 3 very particular areas of the brain that are working on different levels. So like your vegetative level is doing all of your automatic things like breathing and heart rate and things like that. Your limbic system is that emotional center, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, the hippocampus. These are all very important pieces to the limbic system that help us with emotion and social interactions. It's huge. Plus the fact that it communicates when we're in a fight or flight response for what happens with stress. And one thing to know here is that just looking at this brain, this is a healthy brain, but when children and adults are stressed with high cortisol levels because they are chronically stressed over time, and we're talking, I wouldn't really consider it as days as much as months and years of chronic distress, like our children are facing. The brain cells are shrinking. And when the brain cells start shrinking, there's no repairing that. So over time, you start losing your short-term and your long-term memory as a result of this shrinking of these different aspects of the brain related to the stress. So I want to create an impact here because this is important information. And for us, we've got to try to fight the fight the best way we can. But right now, the data that you're going to see is showing you that having the 60 minutes of recess daily is powerful to the health of our children. And for even us as baby boomers, I'm a very healthy individual, but I played a lot. I competed when I got older. There were lots of good things, but I'm a healthy individual. There are a lot of people younger than me that are not as healthy as I am. And I attribute a lot of that to the type of atmosphere that I had in a school setting and a home setting versus what we have today. So play promotes us as individuals. We learn who we are. We learn our individual strengths and weaknesses. We also learn that we can capitalize on our strengths and be better for it. And if we have some weaknesses, we can try to get better with them, but we don't have to get better. We just rely on others to fill in where we aren't as strong. Everybody has specific strengths that we bring to the table that help us as teams to really capitalize on what it is that we're trying to do. You'll see here that that play actually changes the brain at a molecular level, a cellular level, and a behavioral level. We don't say this enough when we're talking in groups of people who are decision makers. Everybody wants us to work on social skills of kids and executive function of kids, and the best place to do this is through play. But we continue to try to do other things to develop those behavioral levels instead of using play as the impetus for changing behavior. Play is where we learn how to fall. And our kids, you'll see, well, I'll go ahead and tell you now, but our kids, because of limb movements that we've studied, and when I say that, working with one limb at a time, like swinging on something, or working with two limbs at a time, so both hands on a bar swinging, or both legs hanging from something, that's using two limbs. And then contralateral is using opposite limbs, which goes across the midsection of the brain, which is awesome for brain development at the molecular, cellular, and behavioral levels. But what you need to also understand is that any movement is good for changes in the brain positively. Unilateral, bilateral, or contralateral are hugely impacting this. It also supports language, early math, early science, peer relations, physical development, and health, which is huge. You can see by these pictures, these are pictures from kids that we've been working with in our schools that have the 4 unstructured play breaks a day. Their fine motor skills are much better than children who do not have at least 45 to 60 minutes. The 20 to 30 minute group are lagging behind the 60-minute group with writing skills, creativity, and problem solving. Continuous learning. This is that math and science kind of concept. With just 15 minutes, 2/3 of that time is naturally developed in math and science skills. This is huge for people to understand, because as I started a minute ago, content is being done on the playground without a teacher being involved in that play. This is important. Teachers are not the only way children learn. And I want us to pause on this, because we've been taught ourselves as educators, and I'm 43 years in as an educator. We think that we are the end all to kids learning, but in reality, we're not. If kids don't learn through play first, they learn how to learn that way. If they don't learn there first, they can't learn from us. That's a huge piece, a huge takeaway, is that they learn first through their own learning through play. And as a result of that, now they can learn through us and use those experiences through play to learn more as they go through a classroom content with us. Here's the limb movement and motor competency, that brain-body connection that I was talking about a minute ago. You see over here, this is bilateral movements. This child is very confident in hanging on a monkey bar and using both arms, but look at that fine motor skill going on there, as well as using both limbs. It's a strength component of both limbs, which is important for being able to have equal movement on both sides of the body, which also helps with the health of physical body. On the right, you see, here's a child climbing here. This is contralateral movements. You see up here, there's a child already up here, and there's another child somewhere right up here. There's three different ones here. This one, not sure she wants to climb the tree yet, but what they're learning from each other is how to navigate. They're talking to each other. How do you get there? And that's just as important as going out and trying something on your own for the very first time with nobody around. We do a test called attentional fatigue, and attentional fatigue is how much brain power is needed to attend to whatever you're saying or whatever you're wanting them to do in education. And what we do is, in the fall, we assess them in the morning and afternoon. And then in the spring, we do the same thing. And we gauge it around 6-7 months apart. So when we do it in the fall, it's early on. And when we come back in the spring, it's later in the spring. We're looking for, is there growth in their ability to react to a task while another task is going on. So we're trying to have them do a little bit of multitasking. And if they're fatigued, if their brains are fatigued, they will have a struggle doing the task that they need to do, which is really a simple task. But because we're adding a more complex task to it, it drags them down. So what we're looking for is, how well do they attend, and how much growth in their attending is possible. So this is a change score, not the actual reaction time score. If it was reaction time, you say, well, we want to see that the reaction time gets better, which would be a downward turn on the, it would look more like from here to downward. And we're looking at the change from fall to spring on how much growth did they have in attending from fall to spring. And so in 2022 to 2023, with two groups, one group is 60 minutes, which is District 2, and the other group is 30 minutes, which is District 1. You see that from fall to spring, the District 1 group of 30 minutes did not change much. They stayed fairly equal from one to the other on their ability to attend. When you went to 60 minutes of recess, look at the growth from fall to spring in their ability to attend. Focus was double what it was in the fall. How many of you, if I were to be able to see your faces right now, how many of you would be able to say that your children are more focused in the spring than they are in the fall? That doesn't happen when they don't have much recess. But when they do, we're talking hundreds of kids that are part of this data right here. And this is showing that they double in their ability to attend from fall to spring, just in 1 year. Now, you have to know too, that both of these groups have had recess at the levels that they've had for several years. And so being able to see this now, it shows that, both groups they're doing okay. But if you had one of the groups in your classroom, which one would you want? And I think you'd want the one that has the 60 minutes over the 30. Obesity, big concern in our country today, but even bigger in Texas. We've had a lot of expansion of bodies, and it's getting worse and worse in our young children. And obesity is directly correlated with heart disease and cancer, type 2 diabetes, 2 chronic diseases, or even 3 or 4 in children now, based on the obesity prevalence. I do want to talk for just a second. We are doing a different type of assessment than BMI. Body mass index is not a good predictor of how overweight or obese children are. We've been using that for years. We need to stop using it. We've got several articles out now that show that BMI is not a good predictor. We need to shift to a body fat scale. And we're using a body fat scale out there called BIA, bioelectrical impedance. This is a scale that children can stand on barefoot, and it will tell you body fat percentage. It tells you lean body mass versus fat body mass. It gives you the BMI number if you want it. It's just that we have found that BMI numbers are way off from the actual body fat percentage that they have. So we've gone to BIA data, and what you see here is 3rd and 4th grade over this past fall and spring. And for 3rd grade, remember, the intervention is 60 minutes, the control is 30. You'll see that the 30-minute group has not much change at all, but they're up around 27% body fat. The intervention group is down around 24.5% and really doesn't change much from fall to spring. 4th grade, you start seeing a shift where the fall group of control, 30 minutes, starts rising. Now, not much, we're talking 0.4 of a point, but still it's on the rise, which is not a good sign. Whereas our 4th grade intervention group, 60 minutes, is on the decline, which is what you do want to see as you're getting older. So we're starting to have an impact on kids at 60 minutes with obesity prevalence. Now, let me break it down into overweight and obese. What we found in the last 3 years is that our obese populations are not getting bigger, but they're not getting smaller. So wherever they are when they start the 60 minutes, they're pretty much sustaining, which is telling us that diet is a bigger part in the equation than just having their playtime to move throughout the day, which is 60 minutes a day. At the same time, our overweight group is changing in the positive direction. They are moving towards healthy weight, if not hitting healthy weight. So we are impacting overweight populations in a healthy direction. We are not hurting the obese population, but we're not getting them to decrease in the obese percentage that they might be in. What I think is interesting, though, is when you look at these body fat percentages of kids, overall, we are below the state percentage level of overweight and obese kids. They're registering somewhere around 28 to 30%, and we're down in the 24, almost 25%. So we're about 5% less, depending on what area of Texas you're looking at least 5% less right now than what the rest of Texas is showing in BMI. It would be interesting to see where they are with BIA, because we really cannot do apples to oranges like this. But it would be interesting for people to start looking at body fat percentage versus the BMI to see if the same things are happening other places with 30 minutes versus 60 minutes. like we're seeing here. We would actually be able to compare that. This again is body fat percentage fall 22 to spring 23. And you see the males and females. If we break it down into females versus males, you'll see that our third grade group of females is not going in the right direction. Our fourth grade group is pretty much stabilized, but our fifth grade group is slightly moving up. With our males, we're seeing a decline in our fifth grade group, which is really, really good. Our third grade group and our fourth grade group have kind of met up there at the 26.5%. So depending on, and this is obesity prevalence, this is not overall with everybody included. This is just our overweight, obese population. Emotional states, if you went on a playground where our kids are, you would see that our kids are very happy. They have a lot of joy. Even after COVID, they have still been happy campers out there. Their self-esteem is higher. Their quality of life is higher. Their overall healthy well-being is better. So looking at emotional states, we've done this through observations, and we've looked at the facial expressions, nonverbal cues of kids in 30 minutes versus kids in 60 minutes. And we're still seeing these kinds of differences between the two, which is 91% of the males in the intervention group are positive emotions on the playground versus 55% in the comparison group. And again, with the females, very similar on the intervention group, a little bit higher with female on the comparison group. And then the not positive emotions, this is what you don't want to see. You don't want to see that 27% of your males are not happy and showing not positive emotions on the playground. All that does is lead to conflict on the playground. I'm going to get into the stress stuff now. And we've had some times of change and uncertainty, but we had times of change and uncertainty before COVID. We will continue to have times of change and uncertainty after COVID. But COVID did have a huge impact on trauma, abuse, neglect in kids. But it also had a huge impact on not being able to do school like we typically do school. So kids were isolated much of the time at their home. They were not connected to the internet enough to be able to really learn. So they come back with a lot of uncertainties around, well, where am I in school compared to others? Am I still okay? A lot of stress and anxiety at home from kids who really compared themselves to others when they're at school and now have nothing to compare to know if they're actually advancing or not. So I wanted to touch on stress impact a little bit before we move into these stress results. But just so you know, there are bioecological influences that can impact all of us. There are psycho-intrapersonal impact influences, and there are social influences. And just to give you a couple of ideas from each one, bioecological influences are things like the Earth's orbit, axis rotation, light and darkness, being able to be in all light, like SAD, seasonal affective disorder. If you're in light most of the time, like Alaska, in the summertime, and then almost in darkness all the time in the winter, that can impact your stress level from a physiological perspective with your hormonal rhythms in the body. Jet lag, electrical pollution. We even think of GMOs now, which are modified agents that go into vegetables, growing vegetables and cattle and all kinds of things. Synthetic chemicals, like if we think about sweeteners, there are some that are much healthier than others, but we have to really watch that we're not allowing these synthetic chemicals into our body on a regular basis. And then food additives that we might have that we're using that we shouldn't. From a psycho-intrapersonal, this has to do with our inner core, who we are, our values, our attitudes, our behaviors. And when we are around people in conflict a lot, we're defending our ego, and I have to say, we've lost our ability to be civil around each other. And this is all to do with I'm right, you're wrong, or you're wrong, I'm right, not listening, not really cluing in. We need to be able to have conversations again, be able to socialize together in healthy conversations around all topics. But we've gotten to a point where we don't do any of that. That's impacting our adult populations as well as our children. They see this around adults. They see this on TV. This is not healthy for kids to see this and then start mirroring it and, identifying, modeling those behaviors themselves in school settings. And then the social aspects are the urban sprawl that we have now, relocation, human rights issues, global warming. I mean, you name it, we've got stuff out there, and those issues are around us all the time. How do we diminish stress? Find a place outdoors, go hiking, go find a waterway to be near, listen to trickling water. I mean, these kinds of things are very important to de-stress. Unstructured play is another way, be able to go out and just play in nature. Social time with friends is very important, but not unhealthy social time, healthy social time. Diet, sleep, these are all ways that we can help our stress levels stay down, because believe it or not, our bodies are our own threat with stress, and our body is going to try to fight whatever stress is going through it, and it's going to do it in a way that compromises our immune systems. And at that point, we've lost the battle. So here are some of those stress levels that y'all been waiting to hear about. But what you see here is one of our first studies that came out right after COVID. And you can see that the national average for cortisol is 6.7 milligrams per part. And for 10-year-olds, it's 8.5 milligrams. We measure cortisol levels of kids through hair. And we take segments off the back of their head, underneath level, right above the scalp. We do not take any DNA. All we're doing is taking the hair from as close to the scalp as possible, 3 centimeters, which is no more than about 2 inches. And then we put it on some foil, we take it back to the lab, and we process that into cortisol. And at that point, we're able to see what the average cortisol levels are of a group. And in this case, we're looking at the sex of the group as well as the group itself. So the control group had 30 minutes of recess, and the intervention group had 60 minutes of recess. And what you're seeing here, this is a small group, 64 control group and 66 intervention. But you're seeing that there's a significant difference in stress levels. We want lower stress levels of cortisol. That means that they're coming back and they're happy. They're settled. They're doing things that are much more positive in their lives and how their bodies are influenced by that. You can see that the control school kids are having, COVID probably had more of an impact on them. They're much higher than pre-COVID, which is the cortisol national average. Our kids are very similar in the 9-year-olds, but in the 10-year-olds, we actually have less stress than the national average pre-COVID. And remember, this was the first semester back post-COVID. We also can see by 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds, the 9-year-olds, 9-year-old control group is much higher than the LiiNK kids, and the 10-year-old group is a little better, but still significantly higher as well. But what's interesting is that the 10-year-old group is averaging 3.67, which is much lower than our 10-year-old group pre-COVID. So this is our first study that we did, and this was fall. In all fairness, you'd think, well, coming back from COVID, fall is probably going to show some things. But this past year, we did some stuff on spring. And again, District 2 is 60 minutes and District 1 is 30. And what you see here is there are higher levels of cortisol than what you saw in a fall sample. But keep in mind that fall doesn't have the test pressures that spring does. So we didn't collect this data until the end of the spring semester. So we did it in May. We collected the fall data in November of 21. So this is a year and a half earlier. This spring data is showing the pressures of testing. But what's interesting is with third grade, we don't have national averages for third grade. We only have it for 9 and 10-year-olds from normative data pre-COVID. But what you're seeing here in our third grade sample is that 30 minutes is up around 25, and our 60-minute group is somewhere down around 16. Our fourth grade groups are fairly similar, but we've seen a lot of similarity in fourth grade across a lot of different variables, especially with the males in the control group and the females in the intervention group, which is causing these numbers to be higher. And then the fifth grade group is hugely significantly different. And again, we see this across attentional fatigue, their obesity levels. They're just, each group looks a little different. If we were to measure them across time, that would be the next step, is what does this fifth grade group look like as sixth graders, as seventh graders, or what does the third grade group look like as fourth graders or fifth graders? What you see here, same group, but we've divided it a little bit differently. We've looked at the males and the females by grade level. You can see that fourth grade group is definitely the male group that's standing out, and the female group in District 2 is standing out. This is with 60 minutes. What we don't know is, are they feeling pressures for the test that other groups aren't feeling? Don't know. I mean, we don't know why this might be happening, but seeing it happen means that we need to look closer into what is going on with those groups in fourth grade. But what you see with District 1 versus District 2 is that we are still significantly lower than them with the male population when you compare across with third graders, but not necessarily with fifth graders. We are definitely different with fourth grade. So you can see third and fourth are significantly different, fifth grade, not so much. With females, significantly different with third and fourth and fifth, but our fourth grade group, our District 1 of 30 minutes is actually showing better results than our fourth grade group from the 60 minutes. And again, we're not sure why, but we need to look into it to see what's going on with that fourth grade group. And this is going across multiple schools, not just one school or two schools, but multiple schools. And again, fifth grade is showing remarkably well. So that fifth grade group, you know, sometimes you say there's a group of bees that come along and you don't want them to land too long. Well, that might be the fourth grade group that's coming through, but the third and the fifth grade groups, they're doing fairly well, but they both have had either 30 minutes or 60 minutes for a period of time where they've kind of settled into what they have. It would be interesting to do a group that has not had that has recess withheld and some other things. One other thing to say about this is that there's been an article recently that has shown that it doesn't seem that we can predict off hair cortisol levels with younger kids. And when I say that, I mean 6 to 8 year olds, which includes the third grade group. Although we're seeing some good data here that's going across. So we're going to continue to collect on third grade because we're finding things a little bit differently than what they found with a different population, that they're not looking at recess. They were just looking at 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and 6-year-olds with hair cortisol just to see where their levels were and how that predicted certain other variables that they might be involved in. So with us, we're taking a little bit of caution with third grade, but all in all, we think that hair cortisol is a good way to assess stress in children. But with younger children, we're probably going to hold off on it and not really test them at these early ages, even though sometimes we think, well, would it be a good baseline? It may be a good baseline for some other things. What they're finding correlations with is stress with obesity and stress with like the fatigue factor, the focus factor. So it would be interesting to, we're going to do some testing on that before we put it out in a publication. But we're going to stick with third, fourth, and fifth, but we're probably not going to go any lower than that at this point until we see what's going on more with other studies with early grade levels. So I want to end with a couple of slides here. How can we all shift what drives distress in our lives and sustain healthier lives? Well, when working with kids, this is going to come with bringing play back to the school day. We've got to have more play. You're seeing it across all the data that we have, is that play is essential to every part of a child's health, and really balancing the child to be able to do better with less discipline issues, less social issues, less technology issues. They become less wanting that technology piece on a regular basis. They're ready to go outside and want to play, and they play differently at different times of the day. But adults need it too. And so having breaks is very important. So one of the things that we do with LiiNK breaks is we set a LiiNK break around certain parameters. The scheduled breaks need to be intentional, so they need to be scheduled. They can't just be, oh yeah, it's been 3 hours, let's go out and take a break. No, they need to be intentional. For adults, no more than an hour and a half, and take a break, including when you have professional development days, when you're doing things that are very important to learn or to listen to someone. You need those breaks every hour or hour 15, no more than an hour and a half before you take a break. Adults aren't listening any longer than children do. I know we want to say we're more mature, we can, stay focused longer, but we check out. Everybody checks out after about 45 to 60 minutes. So we might as well go ahead and give them a break, bring them back in, sit them down, and go again. So set the timer for those intentional breaks. Be unplugged, which means do not take technology out with you. Leave the phone at wherever you are. Leave your Apple Watch, or at least put it on silent when you go outside. Be in tune with nature. Be in tune with the outdoors. Pay attention to what's going on around you outdoors. Look around, release the tension. The outdoors is what brings this. D3, I told you I'd bring this back up. D3 is important because the sun actually naturally penetrates your arms the best to boost the immune system every day. And if you're not going out more than 15 to 20 minutes at a time, you're not going to be compromising your skin with cells that could become cancerous with healthy cells. So you can go outside, you can get those breaks 10 to 15 minutes for you as an adult. Children need 15 at a time to get their wiggles out, to really get the energy out and going, especially boys. But that outdoors with D3, it's fresh air, there's nothing like it. You need to be able to do that, and with your kids. And then deep breathing. Teach your kids how to deep breathe. You learn how to deep breathe. And it comes from the belly. It does not come from the chest and the shoulders. It's a belly breathing kind of thing. And you need to make sure that you're practicing that outdoors and indoors. Healthy outdoor environments are big. And this is me in my favorite place in the world, Sedona, Arizona. This is in the Grand Canyon. This is up in Colorado. And all of these spaces are places where people have really had enjoyable experiences that are out in nature and get us away from those stressful times. Make unstructured play a priority. You all are coming from different places, and I love it that you're here today to learn more about this. But what is one thing you, your school or your environment you work with, your workplace, what is one thing you can do right now to bring play and play breaks, unstructured play, child-directed play into that day? How can you get that to happen? And those are things that you need to think about and work around to make it more beneficial for your children, if you're working with children, or in a workplace where you're working with each other, to make this happen much more intentional. Don't let somebody, and this happens to me all the time, but you know what? It's like a minister who says, well, I can say this because I'm a minister. Well, I can say this because I'm all about what's right for kids and for adults. And what I'm going to tell you right now is very important. When somebody says to you that's doing professional development, we don't have time to take that many breaks. We're going to do one in the morning. We're going to do one in the afternoon. And I'm like, and you think people are going to listen to you? And that's what I say to them. You think people are going to listen to you? Do you feel better because you're able to just throw that information out, that you've gotten it all out there, check the box, oh, we're good? That's quantity, not quality. You need quality instruction, whether it's things that we're doing right now, whether it's in your workforce, whether it's at your school setting, whether it's you're at a outdoor play center. I don't care where you are. Quality is the key, not quantity. Get away from numbers, get away from minutes, and get to the quality of the day. That's what's important. One more thing. Do not extend the day in order to get the material in. If you can't get it in with 10 to 15 minute breaks every hour or every hour 15, you got too much information. Way too much information. People cannot digest that. They need few information pieces scattered throughout and practice them throughout the day. If you want good books to read, read John Medina, Brain Rules, all the different books he has on that. It's excellent reading. Read things from Richard Liu with the outdoors. It's excellent reading. The nature deficit disorder is probably one of the best ways to look at it, or vitamin N, which is nature. All of these things are very important. So, I thank you for your time today. I wanted to leave time for questions and be able to answer those questions. And so I'm going to turn it back over to, I'm not sure who's going to be taking it back over, but I'm going to turn it over to Alice. Good. And yeah, let's see what we have to answer here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. That was wonderful information and super powerful. And I love your strong messaging at the end there, because yeah, tell it like it is. People need to know, these points and understand it and implement it. So thank you for putting that challenge out to everyone to see what they can do in their own workplace, working with kids to integrate those important unstructured breaks. And we have some really good questions in the chat. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen if you don't mind.
I can do that.
And our first question is from Michelle Medina, and she says, many times play is acceptable in early elementary age children, but not as children get older. Can you address play for older elementary and teens? Which is very true. I thought that was a great point to make.
Excellent point to make. And play should be there for all kids all the way through school, including college. It should be there for everybody all the time. But the way that it would look different for the upper elementary, they still need play the same way the young kids do. They may play differently, but remember, there are key play facets. So when we think about how kids play, they need physical play, meaning they can run and tag and jump and climb and all those kind of things. But they also need creative play, which is being able to take sticks and rocks and pots and pans and be able to do things with them in a creative way. But it could also be art, so they can draw with chalk or out on the playground. They can do bubbles. They can, all kinds of things that are creative. Expressive is being able to do things that are more body movement, but expressive of the body. So music could be playing, wind chimes could be going, and you're moving to those rhythms. That's more of that expressive type. Make-believe is huge, but you know what? All kids love make-believe. They all play in certain sectors. We are afraid sometimes of the type of make-believe they're doing, but they're solving their problems through make-believe. They're actually able to work through things that you may see are too aggressive. But if they're playing all the time, children will tell children to stop. And if they don't stop, they won't play with them anymore. It actually goes back to the way it should be, which is, you don't play right, you don't get to play with us. That's not where it is right now. the bullies are winning because there's less time for play and the kids don't know how to navigate or negotiate that. That's what more play does for the day. And then the last one is manipulative. And this is where we see so much with the math and science. And we see a lot of this on the playground where they're working with dams of water, or they're working with puddles and they splash in them. They work with rocks, and if they throw a rock a certain distance or skip the rock, what does it do from a physics or a chemistry perspective? What happens when we work with ants? And the story I tell sometimes is you can put an ant, boys will put ants in their hand, they'll go out in the sun and they'll say, well, does the sun kill the ant? Well, we're talking science here, does it? If you squeeze it too hard first, that's another piece that will kill the ant that they don't realize until after the fact. But these are things that they're learning through play on the manipulative side. So these things are all necessary, whether you're a kinder, let's even go lower than that, a pre-K, all the way up through high school. But what I would say different about middle and high is allow them time at that level to be able to engage in things that they enjoy doing. So if they enjoy sport and they can play it without having fights and, using their whole time to pick a team, but can actually get out there and play, that's one thing. But also allowing them to bring their instruments out there where they can play music, be able to come out and do stuff with clay or different types of, even with the younger kids, Play-Doh, but be able to manipulate those kinds of art areas that they can work in. And with just manipulative things, if they just want to go out and be in nature, let them do that. We don't give them enough time to really work around that. So with middle and high, you might have more of a 30-minute break in the morning and a 30-minute break in the afternoon to work that out, where they're working more concentrated in those areas. I hope that helps.
That was awesome. Thank you. That was very helpful. And I think the manipulatives part enforces the need to have the manipulatives in the play space. So that's why these nature play spaces are so important, and having the logs and the rocks and the water and all that good stuff. Yeah. Our next question is, what tool is used to assess attention fatigue?
So we use a computer dual paradigm task. And we've had to actually have it built by our communication sciences and disorders group that has worked with speech pathology and defibrillation to work around other types of things that they do. But the dual paradigm is this. On a computer screen, you'll have two arrows, one that goes right and one that goes left. And the program is built to measure the reaction time from the time the arrow comes up until the time the child presses the shift key on the right side or the left side. So when they press that key, so the right arrow comes up, the key is pressed, that reaction time, how fast is that? Left side the same way. They'll practice that skill. And then we say, okay, we're going to have you put on an ear set and you're going to hear numbers called off in random order from 1 to 10 numbers. And you have to repeat them in the same succession that they are given to you. If you miss more than 3 times, you're done. So meaning not 3 times with that one series of, let's say they had a series of 10 and they messed up, that's one error. But if they have 3 of those times where they've messed up the numbers, then that's 3 times and we stop their time. They did not complete the task. They are very tired. They can't do what they need to do. But typically, what we see is that in the fall with this, so let me finish out. So the task will come up with an arrow key while the numbers are being given to the child. So they're having to tell the numbers back while hitting the keys. So what happens when they're delayed in focus is they delay their time to hit the key. And that is what shows the slower reaction time. In the fall, being that we do it morning and afternoon, we're looking to see, can these kids be as focused in the afternoon as they are in the morning? Or are they as tired as we think they are when they have less recess? And what we find is the kids that have 60 minutes are faster in the afternoon than the morning in the fall. And they're faster in the afternoon than the morning in the spring. And they're faster overall in the spring than they are in the fall. But with our 30 minutes or less, they're slower in the afternoon than in the morning in the fall. They're slower in the afternoon than the morning in the spring, and they're slower than the intervention kids all the way around.
They're just
So
slow.
it's all the way around. You see, attentional focus is probably very highly correlated with the stress levels and, what's going on the playground with 60 minutes versus 30 or less. I can't wait to get a 20-minute or a group that doesn't even get 20 a day because they're getting punished or they're withdrawing it for tutoring. I mean, those kids, I'm hungry to get those kids to see what they look like.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. That was very visual for me, the way you were explaining it. I had no idea. So we are at our time. We do have a few more good questions. So if our participants have to drop off, no problem. Debbie, if you're game to answer.
Yeah, I can stay on maybe 5 minutes, something like that.
Okay, great. We'll keep recording and this will be in the recording. So I thought this was a really interesting question from Andrea Velez. Are you taking hormone and premenstrual impacts into consideration for the young girls that were in the studies?
No, we're not. What we're doing is we're going off of whole samples of females versus males. And then if they have higher levels than 300 on hair cortisol milligrams per part, which is really high, we exclude them from the study. We can look at that. That would be something we could look at, but because they're not all in that range, we're just allowing the hair cortisol to show what that cortisol level is across the board. There hasn't been any data to really look at what's going on with menstrual cycle. So we're just taking it at what does that cortisol level tell us right now. That'll go further as time goes on.
So this is a little bit of background with a question. This past year, our elementary school complained that children were aggressive on the playground, resulting in some serious injuries. As a result, they took away recess for a large part of the school year. Have you heard from other schools about increased aggression this past school year on the playground? And if so, were there other responses from school administrators? Maybe this is with the bully issue.
Excellent question. So we do a character development curriculum with our 4 recesses a day. We feel it's important to teach empathy, trust, honesty, respect, really be able to bring groups together to understand where each other is coming from and be able to have this kind of unconditional love with each other when they're out on the playground, look out for each other. And so we have included that in what we do. A lot of schools, including even some of our LiiNK schools, have said, there's been a rise in some of the aggressive behaviors out there. But we also there are schools out there that are more private schools or charter schools or pre-K type schools that are not associated with a public school that are allowing kids to work it out, but teaching the teachers how to look for the signs of stopping kids before they get into these highly aggressive places. So there is some stuff that needs to be worked out. We train teachers with LiiNK. We train them on what to look for. We train them on, what's okay, what's not out there. When something is unsafe versus uncomfortable, what does that look like? But you've got to let kids work through some of this, or at least teach them when they have a teachable moment, why they're at this place and they're not working it out right, and start teaching through that how to help them do better with it. But I understand, when you don't have more than 1 recess as it is, aggression is going to be much higher right now than it was before. They just don't have civility skills to help them, social skills that are good on the playground.
Thank you. So it sounds like having a plan in place to deal with it in advance is helpful.
I think a character curriculum is really important. I know that ours is a high-powered one. It's called Positive Action. It's a really good one, but teachers have to adhere to it. And if they don't adhere to it, if they feel like they don't have time to do that, plus do recess, they'll bail on it. And then the kids are right back to where they started. And teachers want to blame recess when in fact, they're not doing what they were supposed to in the first place.
So there are more questions. I'll keep going.
I'll take a couple more.
What, a couple more? Okay. So will structured play yield comparable benefits as unstructured play?
Great question. And no, they don't. Structured play, they have less movement. So we have data. I could have shown so much more data today, but we have data that shows that they move less with structured play because they're standing more, waiting their turn, or they're being told what to do, and so they may not enjoy it as much as if they can have that exploration time to go out there. So it's not as powerful. They're not getting as much movement in, so they're not getting that focus back and that energized brain back. And we want to see more steps, more moderate to vigorous physical activity. But importantly, we do not stress that it's movement oriented. And that's what structured play individuals want to do. They want to make sure that kids are moving. We don't care that they move, therefore they move. It's a counterintuitive thing, but they will move as long as you don't care. But if you start caring that they have to move, they don't want to move.
So if you tell them to move, they won't move.
And if you let them just
about
go,
right,
they move.
right. Okay, our last question. This is from Dina Toland. How can we bring nature elements into intensely urban settings? Our play yard has a school garden and a loose parts playground, but it's flat and dusty and has a few trees, but no water. And, you know, we have had webinars on this. There's a lot of information out there, but if you have just like a quick resource or an idea to share.
Yeah, I would say that's something that we're working on, but I would say that your resources are really good for that. And, you know, if there's something that you can send her that's got some information already in it, that would be great. And all I would say is, yeah, water would be awesome. But if you needed to, just bring water from the indoors, outdoors, you know, in a bucket or something. You could do something like that. But keep in mind that as long as you have good playscapes, play spaces for them to be able to engage, you don't have to have it all. That's important to know.
Yeah, kids are resourceful and they'll find something to play with, even minimal.
They may dig down low enough to get the water.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you so much for your expertise and your knowledge and your research and all the hard work that you're doing to advocate for kids and getting kids playing outdoors, having more recess time, unstructured playtime, all of this wonderful stuff. So we appreciate the update on your research and
thank you.
The information on the benefits. And as I mentioned, I'll be sending out the recording. We'll have key resources from the chats.
And keep in mind, a lot of my podcasts, the podcasts that are going now, are covering a lot of material as well from big name people that are talking about different aspects. So that would be good too.
Do you have a specific podcast?
I do. Yep. And I can send the address to you.
Okay, perfect.
And then you can send it out. Yeah, if you'd like to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Debbie, will you enjoy the rest of your day? And thanks again for spending your afternoon with us. And to all our participants, thank you so much for being here and being involved with Texas Children in Nature Network. And hopefully we'll see you at our next webinar in August 2nd, which is coming up very soon. I put the information in the chat. So y'all have a great afternoon. Take care.
Thanks again.
Thank you.